with
Is this still the Kongsberg 302?
this is our system, yeah. This is an EM302 Kongsberg, so it's really optimized for deeper water than what we're at today. This is about 320 meters, I believe. Most of the work we do is deep water, off the continental shelf, and deep sea seamounts and canyons and things like that. That's really what our sonar's best at.
I'd just like to say that, you know, what a capacity this represents for the research that we've been doing in the region off North Carolina. That, you know, we've done a lot of work on shallower water wrecks, you know, from 300 feet, you know, down to 50 feet, and the resolution that we can get and the accessibility that we have with divers and photogrammetry and you know, high resolution multi-beam systems is great in that shallower water. But what the Okeanos brings to the table is being able to look at these places that we haven't had the opportunity to look before, to have a system that can look into deeper water and then actually go there and ground truth targets. It's really a unique opportunity for us, and it kind of opens up a new frontier for what we know is out here. So it's very exciting to have this chance, and we appreciate what you guys are doing for us.
Well, thank you, Joe, and thanks for sharing all this information about where we should go look. We've been getting some great guidance on search areas and some feedback on when we do find something, support from shore on trying to figure out what it might be.
Lights. I'll set your rotator to 5.5.
Now, would you please range me to 50 meters?
Pilot, okay to cap off your camera for black balance?
Derek and Joe, maybe you could tell the viewing audience a little more about how telepresence has enabled this search and hopefully successful findings.
What happened to
Sure. Well, so we've been surveying in the area for the past 2 nights. We did have separate, during the day we had remotely operated vehicle dives on other features of interest, mostly for biological or geological interest. But what we can do with telepresence is share the information that we find with shore. We have a high bandwidth connection via satellite from the ship to shore, so we can take the type of imagery that we're collecting on the ship, the data that we're seeing kind of now, and we can share that with shore quickly through that high bandwidth connection. But then actually yesterday we had a conference call with OER's archaeologist Frank Kentelis and Joe Hoyt from the Monitor Marine National Sanctuary Monument, and we went through this kind of in, we just shared screens and looked at the backscatter data from the sonar, looked at the bathymetry, and tried to discuss what made the most sense as the best likelihood of actually being a shipwreck, and trying to narrow down our choices. And we agreed that this was probably the best target we were able to find based on 2 nights of survey work. So just the ability to have, to be able to share screens, share views, share video, and talk with people and really just act like you're in the same room together has been a very collaborative process, and just allows us to be a lot more effective with the time we have at sea. Joe, do you have anything to add?
I would echo that. Yeah, I would say that, you know, I totally agree, and the great thing about what we've got going on here is, as Derek said, we've got the ability from a science and research perspective to really quickly coordinate and share information and get, you know, eyes on the seabed in real time. But for us at the Monitor National Marine Sanctuary, and what we're trying to achieve with the potential expansion of our boundaries to protect these additional resources is really sharing with the public what we can see. And there's really no cooler way to do that than this real-time data stream that's broadcast over the internet that anyone can tap into, that can see this stuff happening in real time. And so much about what we're doing here is to try to protect and preserve the history and the sacrifice of the Allied forces and the merchant marine that lost their lives here in this battlefield off our coast that so few people really know about. And having resources like this to bring to bear to share that story and project you know, really to anyone that has an interest to tune in, they can explore right along with us at the same time that we're seeing it, they're seeing it, and that's an incredible opportunity for a public-facing program that needs to engage the public and get them to care about these resources.
Copy. I'm going to tilt main sheet back down if you're done with it. Copy.
Thanks a lot for that information.
So, Derek, I know we discussed this in our dive planning call last night, but your plan is to kind of approach the wreck from the scour and, you know, get the lay of the land to avoid obstacles and things. It might be cool to explain for listeners what the sort of limitations and risks are and how we're approaching this and why we're kind of moving slowly across the seabed.
Sure, yeah. I don't know if the lead of our ROV team, Bobby, is on right now. If he could probably explain that better than I could. We were talking about the approach that the ROV team's taking today as they approach the potential wreck. I can speak probably in general terms, but
yeah, well, we just sat down, as you probably see on your screens, and we're heading sort of through the middle of the scour, southwest towards the bottom target. We're sort of doing this for a couple reasons, one of which is current in the area.
Thank you, pilot.
For the safety of the vehicles, we need to approach from the northeast side.
I'd like to stand by and take pilots.
But also the walls of this trough or scour are about the height that Sirius is from D2, and so coming down those, if we were to start on the higher land and then come down, it'd be much more difficult for the vehicles. And so for the best approach here is going to be coming along the middle of the scour until we can get eyes on the target, and then see what we're dealing with as far as rigging or any other potential hazards, and assess the situation. And if you're watching, we are just finishing up our white balance, and we have a ship move going in momentarily, so we'll be making our way towards the target. I think it's roughly about 300 meters away to the first bump in the area, so to speak. So we should hopefully have it in sonar range in a little while.
Full permission to just zoom past
okay.
skids when you want.
So on stream 3 right now, based on what Bobby was just talking about, I've drawn a blue line. So if we're starting from the northeast at the far right side of that blue line, the vehicles are basically going to be moving towards the southwest, up at the bottom, up the bottom of that scour, just kind of traversing along it and approaching the yellow cloud that you see.
Great.
And
camera back.
we don't know what's going to be either attached to this, or what structures are going to be hanging from it, or if there's any fishing gear associated with it. So those are all hazards in terms of vehicle entanglement that they're trying to avoid and make sure they approach cautiously.
Bridge, this is RV now.
Bobby, Derek, Bobby mentioned first target. Would that be that dark spot on the left?
No, that's actually, this is probably a temporary hole in our bathymetry grid due to the quick cleaning we had to do.
So it's a void.
But the probably this yellow cloud is what we think is the structure of what's there.
Okay.
Cloudy down
So
here.
that's what we're trying to approach, and that's what we're probably roughly 300 meters away from.
Turbine here. Yeah.
RV nav bridge, move initiated.
Move initiated. Thanks, Bridge.
So for people at home, there's a current working, it's coming from sort of bottom left of this image and working up to the top right, and that's what's causing that scour. And that's the current that we're working into today, which is actually a nice orientation for the vehicles to be moving towards the current so they get pushed by it.
So, yeah. Copy.
what kind of current did you guys notice while the vehicle was dropping through the water column? Was it pretty light today, or?
Not much current on bottom.
Bobby's going to answer that question.
Unfortunately, the sensor that gives us current conditions at the surface, we've been having some problems with it the last day or so, but based on a couple other sensors we have up on the bridge, we are estimating about a knot of current on the surface.
Very good. That's pretty light for this area. The area that we're operating in, for those that are listening online, is a really unique, place from a geomorphological standpoint. There's a confluence of oceanic currents that come together off of Cape Hatteras and creates a very unique environment that forms the Outer Banks, but also creates a very interesting sea conditions where you can have variations in current throughout the water column, particularly the Gulf Stream, which sort of meanders along the coast. If you're in the thick of it, you can have several knots of current, but it kind of migrates throughout the day, and you can have current change throughout the course of a single day. You can have different current directions throughout the water column. So it's a really unique and challenging place to work. So it's good that we've got mild conditions today.
Right now,
and we're seeing a sandy/muddy bottom that we would expect to find out here.
Periodically, for any taller dangers you might come across. Understood.
All the little hummocks are just from burrowing organisms.
Okay, I'm looking at a 3-4 right now, pilot, with the bottom of the frame, so that means we're in pretty good position.
Copy that.
And we are at the outer edge of what's known as the continental shelf, where it's beginning to dip down into a much steeper gradient called the continental slope.
And during the handoff, you can just let the next co-pilot know to...
This area has...
It's really interesting to see the proximity of the continental shelf here is pretty critical for the way that we're looking at this area for characterizing this region as a battlefield. And the continental shelf is a major component in that. And if you think of a land battlefield where there's some tree lines or trenches or areas of high ground, the bottom topography influences the way that the submarines operate in the area, the way the ships move through the area, the currents play a factor, with all these different sort of natural features in the landscape that come together to make this area particularly strategically significant for the eco war. And the continental shelf, its real role in that was it's close proximity to shore here in North Carolina, where the shelf break comes close into the shipping lanes, so you could have access if you were in a submarine, you could have access to a high concentration of ships, but also really quick access to deep water where they could have base counterattack.
But when it is, I do have
really
the next one ready for you if you'd like.
Right on the edge of
50
operational
meters,
capacity, about
bearing
750 feet was the working depth.
and then also speed decimal
This
3.
is
So
deeper, but we're
about 4 more meters, and I'll
a
punch
mile
in
or
the
so from shallow water. So this is an area where they really like to operate. That's why we see a lot of shipwrecks in this area.
What kind of depth could the U-boats reach?
So they could Type 7C, which is all the U-boats that are lost in North Carolina, are Type 7C. They were Type 921 were also in the region. But the Type 7s were the ones that we still have here, and those were working pressure, I think, about 750 feet, which is significantly deeper than we believed they could do at the time. This area, you had, ships running along the 100,000 line around
I trimmed it a little bit to starboard.
flying patrol, the U-boats could get in there, attack ships, and then be able to dive down
And that was a
in deep water.
Still going
north
0.3.
Paris off of New England and Boston. Those areas where there's still a lot of shipping, the continental shelf goes out much, much further. So having that dense shipping lane associated with access to deep water makes it very unique.
Your audio really is dropping off there, Joe.
Okay, that's back at 3.5.
Curious. Is it interference or is it just coming in and out?
It's almost like you're on a cell phone where sounds like you're in a tunnel. Starts to fade out.
I am not.
That's better.
Gonna rotate up real quick.
Yep.
Okay, that's back at 3.5.
Copy.
Bridge, this is RV Nav.
Go ahead, RV Nav.
Yeah, hit the next move once that one's complete.
Yeah, I'll write it down. We still have 22 more meters.
Understood.
Okay.
Range 100 meters.
Okay.
Bearing 224, so the same bearing. Speed decimal 3. Or essentially just keep moving 224.
Okay, so 100 meters bearing 224, speed decimal 3.
Perfect. I'll keep the boat moving that way, guys.
Copy that.
Copy nav.
Just keep an eye on layback in case we do need to make sudden stops.
Understood. Yeah, right now, pretty much zero layback.
Get a hard target on your sonar. Does it tend to go yellow?
And I can always call them moving.
Well, if we... Are you talking about the ROV sonar?
Yeah.
Yeah, Bobby's getting on.
If you're looking at the ROV sonars, the 360 scan on the right side is Sirius, and the scan on the left is D2. The object I believe you're talking about is on the right scan, the 360 scan. There's a yellow target about 25 meters out. That's actually the vehicle. That's Deep Discoverer as seen by Sirius.
But when you get a hard target, your return's typically more of the color yellow tones, right?
Correct. With the current settings of the sonar, we'll see yellows and oranges for harder targets.
Copy that.
Looks like we're getting pretty stretched out now.
Copy.
We're seeing a lot of material in the water column. You can tell that there's some current, and that's not unexpected since we are beneath a portion of the Gulf Stream that, even though you think of it as a surface current, it reaches down to significant depths. We have felt its effect at depth on many of our dives. in this area, because of the nearby continental shelf, we're sort of on the edge of it.
New move has been initiated.
Any currents, even tides, can be affecting the suspension of material, of sediment material. And on top of that is also the settling from the water column of shell material from dead organisms and other organic material that we refer to as marine snow. And all of that gets pushed around by the Gulf Stream, but eventually settles on the sea floor, making this very soft substrate. And in terms of the mapping efforts, the soft substrate gives a very weak return of the acoustic signal. A lot of the material, a lot of the sound gets absorbed when it hits this kind of surface. When the sound alternatively hits a harder substrate like a rock or a structure, then we see a higher backscatter intensity return. And that tool has been instrumental in helping to locate the feature that we are approaching. And Derek Sowers and his team of mapping, the mapping folks on board have done a great job in pinpointing the area, and we've gone back to it and added a couple other lines to verify that it was not an artifact, meaning bad data. Should not have been cleaned out. It never was. They identified it right away. And so now we have a lot more information than what we had 3 days ago. So it's very exciting as we approach it from the scour side of the feature. Any large object in the water that remains for long periods of time, the currents move around it and scour areas behind it and prevent sedimentation along that area due to the increased currents. And so it has sort of dug out, what was it, a 700-meter long scour behind this large object that showed the high intensity backscatter returns.
And if anybody looks at camera 2, the Sirios view, you'll see many squid in the water column above the D2 ROV. And looks like an octopus, probably.
We call that calamari out on the West Coast.
Right.
You guys get Humboldt squid in the Atlantic?
I don't believe so. I
No,
think they're
think so.
restricted to the West Coast.
I don't believe that we do.
They've got you at 4-0 now.
They're ferocious.
We only get kraken. We get a lot of kraken out here.
The kraken.
Wow. Look at that shot.
I understand Nautilus is looking for a meteorite up in the Olympic coast. Now that's some geology. Somebody's audio is delayed.
Someone asked earlier what the object might be if it were not a vessel or some man-made object. And it's very large. I guess you could always consider the possibility of what we call a glacial erratic, but it's so big. I don't think we've ever seen one quite that large, certainly in the subsea. And but if it were smaller, a glacial erratic would be feasible, not to discount it. But a glacial erratic is a very large boulder that is misplaced by transport from icebergs or more normally by glaciers moving across continents. But this area is an area that we know has had many icebergs travel southward during different episodes of the last 18,000 years of climate change history, and during the last glacial period when sea level was lower, this area was quite shallow.
Put D2.
Probably on the order of 100 to 150 meters water depth instead of the over 300 meters that we are seeing. And so that if an iceberg were to follow along the current that was prevalent at that time, which was the Labrador current, which hugged the coast and traveled farther south than it currently does, then those icebergs would have been dragging their bases on the seabed. And we've seen several areas where that's occurred. Off of Charleston, we found one several years ago on the Nancy Foster, and there have been many. Jenna Hill and her group have found them. And then even on this expedition, on the first leg, during the mapping leg, a very prominent one was found at over 300 meters. I can't remember the depth. Over 400 meters water depth, I believe. So we know that icebergs have been in this region, but we don't see any real evidence of scour mark, an iceberg scour or plow mark on the sonar. So it doesn't really look like an iceberg traveled through here and melted and dropped a very large rock. So unlikely that that's what we're looking at on the multi-beam. There should be other evidence than just a large rock.
We should know soon. Joe, how many World War II casualties are you looking at in your study off this region?
So it's a great question. The area itself had about 90 vessels that went down off North Carolina, but off North Carolina is, a little subjective in the sense that some of those are, 150, 200 miles offshore or more. But in the data set that we've been looking at for the purposes of our research, we've included those. We believe there's about 52 sites that are on the continental shelf and have been sort of the focus of our field work to do characterization and evaluation of those sites. And of those, we've done work on a little over 40 of them. So there's a few that we haven't been to, and then there's just a small handful of those that we just haven't found, of which we're hoping that it's one of them.
That's impressive work. Congratulations.
Well, it's an exciting area. It's really unique. The Valley Atlantic was something that took place, in the entire ocean. It's one of the largest battlefields in human history. But there's particular areas where there was, concentrated activity, and this is one of them. It's a really unique representation of an American battlefield. When we think of World War II, we're thinking of places like Normandy, Iwo Jima's, and think of things that happened in faraway places. But this is really a unique spot, and where World War II came home to the doorstep of America, and then just a few miles from where we're diving right now is the wreck of the U-85, a German submarine that's just 14 miles from Oregon Inlet, which is less than most people's commute to work from shore. And the ocean sort of swallows everything up, and it's easy to think that everything's far away, but it's unbelievable how close this activity came to our shore, and to be able to have the opportunity to look at these and study these and hopefully get people to understand that we have a really unique collection here that should be celebrated and studied and preserved. It's a pretty exciting opportunity.
Okay, great.
40 meters, 224 degrees, decimal 3.
Okay, we have about 15 more meters to go, and I'll enter that new move of 40 meters bearing 224 speed decimal 3.
There are a lot of other casualties non-World War II in this area, too.
Oh, absolutely. This area is sort of referred to as the graveyard of the Atlantic because of the high degree of shipwrecks that have occurred in this region. So really, from the colonial period onward, we have massive ships wrecking here pretty consistently. I think the first recorded wreck is about 1545, I think, near Okeanos. And ships have been wrecking ever since. And one of the real reasons for that is that where we're sitting right now in the Gulf Stream it's basically a big international highway. It was a natural feature that particularly during the age of sail would really help ships move around the Atlantic Ocean. So you've got ships from Europe coming over down to the Caribbean and Mexico, and then they were to get back over to Europe. You'd ride the Gulf Stream up the East Coast, and it basically heads east right around Cape Hatteras. It shoots you right back towards Europe. So it's been a major thoroughfare for shipping throughout post-contact period, and as a result, because North Carolina then also is has dangerous shoals, shallow inlets, and several conflict periods took place here as well. The U-boats were here obviously in World War II, but in World War I as well.
ROV,
and then of course we have famous Civil War shipwrecks like USS Monitor that's just a few miles from where we are right now. And it's an area that's rich with history and has just an unbelievable cross-section of shipwrecks from a multitude of different periods throughout the last 400, almost 500 years.
Wow. Thank you.
Okay.
Just to show you that this while we have a sort of a working theory of what we might be finding here today, if it is indeed a shipwreck, it may be a World War II shipwreck is what we're studying, but it could very well be something else. It could be something older. It could be something associated with World War I. It could be something associated with just the general shipping industry, a weather event, a collision. It's difficult to say because there's just so much that we know has been lost out here.
Including the first National Marine Sanctuary shipwreck.
That's right. Yeah, the USS Monitor was lost here during the Civil War. I'm not sure exactly how far we are from that location, but probably about 10 or 15 miles away. Iconic Civil War ironclad that was lost and has been the centerpiece of the Maritime Heritage Program, the National Marine Sanctuaries, since our establishment. And we've been working out here for over 40 years studying the Monitor, and but over the last 10 years we've begun to expand our focus to recognize that there's a much broader collection of resources in the area, and we've been focusing a lot of effort to try and understand those, get documentation of those sites, and in the process of doing that, we've come to really understand that this area is incredibly unique in our country, particularly from the aspect of understanding it as an American battlefield. We've been working really hard to try to expand the protections of the Sanctuaries Act to include World War II shipwrecks and other historic wrecks in the area. So it's a pretty incredible place.
We could range out serious.
And how many of the ships have you been successful in National Register nomination?
Let's see what it looks like.
We currently have 11 sites that are listed that are associated with World War II, and a couple that are associated with World War I, the Diamond Shields Light ship, which is really close to where we are as well. We work closely with D.D. Marks, so done a multiple property nomination as well. So, well, we have, like I said, only about a dozen sites that have been officially listed on the register. We have a multiple property designation as well for the World War II conflict. So these other sites are eligible under that designation. So one of our goals is to continue to collect data and ultimately work towards getting as many of these sites that we can find, identify, and characterize nominated to the register.
Terrific. Are there many museums locally that focus on your work? The World War II period there?
We work closely with a number of museums. Our closest partner is with the Mariners Museum in Newport News that houses and does the active conservation on the monitor material that was recovered, the turret and the engine predominantly. And so we had a long-standing partnership with the Mariners Museum that focuses on our work on the monitor. But they also, they interpret, a kind of a holistic cross-section of maritime history. So they interpret, age of sail, colonial period, and of course World War II as well. So we work closely with them, and then there's a number of amazing institutions in North Carolina that we work with as well. The Graveyard of the Atlantic Museum down in Hatteras Village. They've got, they're right kind of at ground zero for a lot of this history. So we've got some exhibits and support that we've been doing with them. We also partner on exhibits with the North Carolina Aquarium System, particularly at Roanoke Island, where they've got a replica of the monitor in their big tank. They've got some interpretive material on World War II in their exhibit gallery. Monitor in their exhibit gallery. And then we have some exhibit space that we've done at the life-saving station in historic life-saving station in Virginia Beach, and we partner with basically anybody that we can to try and get the story out in this area.
Speed decimal 2.
All right. I think you're getting a nice little return on the sonar. Something. Or is that just the wall of the scour?
It's starting to get a little stretched out.
Yeah, copy. I'm just laterally at this point.
Could we make the range on that move 30 meters?
Roger, increasing to 30.
Thanks.
RV nav bridge, move initiated.
Move initiated. Thanks, Bridge.
So most of the merchant vessels, do they have any protection as far as submerged stuff?
Yeah.
That part of why you want to create possibly a future sanctuary. And
I'm sorry, you guys broke up there for a second. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, I was just wondering, currently these sites, other than military vessels that are protected under the Sunken Military Craft Act, are there any protections in place currently?
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. I thought you were asking about protection of the merchant ships from a historic perspective, and they had armed guard crews aboard, many of them. But no, that's a great question. One of the reasons that we're doing this effort towards expanding is because there is sort of a gap in the legal protection, particularly as it applies to the merchant ships that are out here. And this side of it is Levika Makovic. It's a perfect example of that. Where, like you said, the military vessels that are lost out here, Allied ships, we've got U.S. warships, patrol craft, British anti-submarine trawlers, and of course German U-boats that are lost here. And those military vessels, they do have protection under Sunken Military Craft Act, and the merchant ships are often sort of left out. They fall under admiralty law, which isn't really designed as a cultural resource protection law. It's more a property law, and so these merchant ships are sort of unprotected, and as a result, there can be some degrading impacts that happen to the sites over time. And what we can do with the National Sanctuaries Act, if we establish a new or expanded sanctuary around these sites, is kind of close that gap, make sure that these are protected and preserved from damage. And so that's a big focus of what we're doing.
Well, that must be really important to the merchantmen that actually served in this period that are still alive and their families.
Yeah, our office has been working closely in keeping veterans groups, particularly merchant marine groups, informed of what we're doing. I think they seem to be very honored. As you know, the story of the merchant mariners was sort of unsung in the sacrifice that they made in this history. They had the highest casualty rate of any service, percentage-wise. your likelihood of being lost was higher as a merchant mariner than as a Marine. And they don't really get the recognition. They didn't receive even partial veteran status until 1988. So telling their story and honoring their history is super important to them. And we're really proud to be able to tell these stories and make sure that what sacrifices they made that they're remembered.
I just saw your recent interview, a few of them Memorial Day. That was really terrific.
ROV Bridge currently holding station.
Thanks, Coach. Yeah, you guys can turn port.
Yeah, I mean it's just amazing because this history is so underrepresented, and particularly in the minds of the American public, that it's kind of forgotten. People along the coast are aware of it, but you move inland and you tell people that submarines were sinking ships just miles from shore, and they're blown away, and we're in a unique place right now where we can tell these stories and share them in a way that we haven't been able to do before.
Okay.
We're getting really
They
close.
pretty much censored the attacks in the newspapers, even though it was obvious. You could see the explosions offshore and here.
200.
Sounds great.
Copy.
Certainly, the sinkings were often reported in the newspaper. I think they were downplayed a bit to not induce panic, but there was just so much going on at this time in 1946 that at any other time, 90 ships being sunk off North Carolina would be the biggest story on the planet. But during World War II, there was just so much chaos happening that a lot of this was kind of background noise, and we're just now at a point where we're able to kind of go back and characterize these things in a way that can really recognize the significance that was so at the time.
Zoom right there, video. Just looks like a soda can coming back.
Great.
Yeah, just looks like a can and combined.
We need to shut off their audio.
Mind if I change the background on HiPAC to a backscatter?
Yeah, whatever you would like there.
It's going to go gray for a second. So maybe
Yeah, I think this is I think we got tricked at this site.
This is Herb Garrison, University of Georgia. Just wondering if we were breaking up or just someone's talking.
I think no one's talking as we're starting to get up on some. I think we're getting closer to the target, so we're on base breath.
That's fine. Gotta. Copy.
So was that modern trash we were passing?
Sure looks like
I
it.
see nothing. Well, there might be something ahead. I'm not seeing much though to this side.
Understood. I think the next thing to do is to keep moving through this area to see if we see anything.
Yeah.
I'm going to acquire this over here, if possible.
Sounds good.
Which is also on the way to the largest feature, so. This is not the largest target today, so that's good.
Copy.
I think from Sirius to the next target I got 231. If we wanted to turn a little bit starboard for the next move, maybe? Unless you see something to port that you wanted to check out.
I can do another pass, but I didn't see anything.
Okay.
It just looked like an area where trash was collecting.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay, pilot will come about to 230.
Yeah.
Copy. I'll take a last peek to port.
Bridge is RV now.
We're pretty stretched out.
Go ahead, RV nav.
Yeah, I got the next move once that one's complete.
Okay, ready.
Range 40 meters, bearing 230 degrees, speed decimal 2.
Okay, 40 meters, bearing 230, speed decimal 2.
It's a good copy.
So where are we relative to the multi-beam target? Is this?
230.
Are we right on it now?
Copy that.
I wonder if the backscatter hard returns was this like hard rock shelf, and then
It went from soft to hard. I think that's what happened. Yeah.
I think so too.
RV nav bridge, move initiated.
So
Thanks, Bridge.
there's just a question about which target we were looking at now, and this looks like one that's
Video quick
not
zoom
the
here.
largest
Just looks like
target.
more trash.
It's part way up
Yeah,
the scour.
lots of trash. Can.
Yeah.
It definitely is a collection point here.
I think it's just a ditch down here.
Yeah.
Those don't. Just looks like modern.
No matter where
trash
you
to me.
go in the ocean, it seems like there's always a tin can.
We've seen many a can on this expedition.
You okay with
How do you
increasing
like the
speed
new
decimal
monitor
3?
there in Silver Spring, John?
Or you want me to just keep going 0.2?
It's pretty awesome. It's like a sci-fi movie.
I'm
We're
fine
at the
decimal
command
3.
center.
Unless something comes up in sonar.
Yeah.
You can just push.
Yeah, I saw it earlier in the
We're
month.
pretty
Pretty
far out
impressive.
as well, so if something comes up, you can
Bridge
back.
is RV now.
Yeah.
Go ahead, RV nav.
Yeah, if we could increase the speed to decimal 3.
Okay, I will bump it up to decimal 3.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to rotate up real quick.
Copy that.
You're just right at the edge of my light pool right now. So that's 3.5.
Copy, Copilot. Sargasm. Yeah, I'm seeing nothing on sonar here. Just looks like a lot of sand. So Nav, what's the update?
We're just going to keep going to target 2.
Copy.
And then what this was just like a harder return here.
Yeah.
So we're going to go to this hard return, and then we'll go to the main, the largest feature.
If nothing, what about the auxiliary point?
Yeah.
Is that a last-ditch effort? Or?
Yeah, I think so.
Copy.
And over here, there was also like a hard return on this.
Yeah.
This side. So maybe we'll go past target 2, look at the largest target, and then we'll go from there. See what the team wants to do. Bridges is RV nav.
Go ahead, RV nav.
Yeah, we could go ahead and tack on 50 meters to that move.
Okay,
bearing
adding
230, yeah.
Okay, adding 50 meters to the 230 bearing.
Understood.
Roger. RV nav bridge. We now have 57 meters to go. Move has been initiated.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
We now have 57 meters to go.
Joe, when you're doing your research as it relates to U.S. merchant ship losses, do you rely mostly on Coast Guard records?
So the majority of the records were kept in what's called the Eastern Sea Frontier War Diary. That's all housed at College Park at the National Archives. The Coast Guard also keeps records. A lot of photographs come from the Coast Guard, particularly the photographs that are kind of most contemporary to the time of loss are kept by the Coast Guard, but all that stuff's the National Archives. So it's a mixture of services, but most of the after-action reports are Navy reports. So we also get
most of what I look at
primary
came
sources
from a lot of the Coast Guard
German records as well.
Special report that's related to the attack.
I'm sorry, Bob, did you have another question? You were kind of breaking up on that last one.
No, I was just saying that I know we use some of the Coast Guard records out here in the Pacific for the attacks from the I-boats, Japanese. Been very useful.
Yeah. Yeah, they generated a lot of records. Any individual vessel that went down, usually there's a Coast Guard record of, naval record of. We've done research on one set of wrecks that's close by to where we are right now that, when it was lost in a convoy, we had escort vessels were Coast Guard vessels, Navy vessels, aircraft, all of which file after-action reports. So you've got, in some cases, the problem is you have too much data, particularly some of these older positions that you'll get will say, you'll have 5 different vessels of different branches that are all talking and reporting about an event that, happened in one singular location, and when you look at where they're all saying it was, it, plots out over 50, 60 square miles. So it's really difficult to research. We have great records, but finding what archives they've all landed in and being able to pull out the relevant information is always a challenge.
we lose our feed? Oh, I see it. It's live again. Sorry.
The target slightly to your starboard, according to HiPAC, that is. The hard target at a range of 50 meters out.
So slightly starboard, 50 meters out.
Yeah, that's
Copy.
That's where the hard return is on the back scatter.
Picking nothing up on D2 sonar, nor Sirius. At what target were 35 meters? Was it suspected?
What was that?
Which target did we suspect to have 35 meter tall features?
Oh, that was way back here.
Oh.
We're way past that.
Yeah, so I don't know what that was.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe reflections off his...
Must be, yeah.
Totally sure. Yeah, so if we don't see anything here, then we'll pass. We'll do a drive-by, and then we'll keep going towards the largest target down here.
Sounds like a plan.
Which I think off to your port, I could start to see the uphill for that, actually. Bridge is RV nav.
Go ahead, RV.
Yeah, I'd like to add 20 meters to that move once it's done. Looks like it just completed, actually.
Okay, I will add 20 meters to the bearing of 230.
Good copy.
All right, initiating now.
Thanks, Bridge. All right, I'll get you 20 meters closer, and then I'll work you southbound.
Copy.
Not seeing anything here, you guys?
We're still moving at 230, right?
Yeah. Yep. 230. I got 20 more meters of 230.
Copy.
Still nothing in D2 sonar.
Can we get the ROV pilots to kind of give us an indication of where we are relative to the main target?
Rotating.
Roger that.
Go ahead, watch one. Yeah. D2 is 100 meters away and approaching. Yep.
So we just asked Nav, and we're about 100 meters from the biggest target now.
You breaking up. What was that distance, please?
It was 100 meters.
Thank you.
Sure.
That's a 3-5 pilot. Rotator.
Copy. All right, looks like we got something off to port.
Yeah,
towards
so
the larger.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have that slope. Nothing hard though. Might be something center coming up. So this next swing should put us right over, right? As I swing starboard?
Yeah. According to my instrumentation. Yeah, we'll finish this 20-meter move. And then we'll turn to port to line up with the larger target, and then we'll head that way.
Sounds good.
And I got D2 about 100 meters from it. So.
Yeah, it looks like there's something in the top left there. And
Yeah, sonar.
Go ahead, watch one. Yeah, I think that's the bottom slope of the, yep.
And yes, that target that you're seeing on the sonar to the left is at least the slope of the beginning of the main target.